Hi guys, this video is for an extension for some of you with our graphing lines unit. We're going to talk about comparing slopes with one another. Now the top here, it says that we have been talking about slope and how slope describes how steep a line is. Right? And we know we can have positive slope, negative slope, zero and undefined. We're going to compare slopes with one another. In order to compare slopes, we need to remember something called absolute value. Now, we talked a little bit about absolute value way back at the very beginning of the year in Unit 1. If you forget what absolute value is, the definition of absolute value is a number's distance from zero. Now, whenever we've done absolute value, one kind of shortcut way to think of it is not just the number's distance from zero, but you take the number inside the absolute value and make it positive, because distance has to be positive. So we can say it's the positive version of the number inside these absolute value bars. Okay, so the absolute value of -2, well, the positive version of -2 is +2. The absolute value of 18, 18 is already positive, so its absolute value is 18. That's its distance from 0. The absolute value of -1/8 is +1/8. The absolute value of -5/3 is +5/3. And finally, the absolute value of -9 is 9. That should be pretty easy. Now, it says, circle the value above that has the largest absolute value. So you look at the answers, not the numbers inside the absolute value bars, the answers, the 2, 18, 1/8, 5/3, and 9. Which one is the largest? Well, 18 is the largest because it's the biggest number. Right? We're going to deal with that kind of thing here as we go. So for graphs of lines, steeper lines have larger absolute values. Okay, so it says for the following two pairs of graphs, circle the graph with the steeper slope. Well, in order to compare, we can do two things. We can either look at the picture, okay? So that's one way. I'm going to skip down to the bottom here. What two ways were you able to compare? Well, you could look at the picture and simply tell me, for the one on the left, which line looks steeper. So for now, because we're going to do the math here, I think that the graph on the right looks steeper. It's going up faster. So that's what I think. Let's make sure by actually counting the rise over run. Remember, in order to do rise over run, we have to pick some nice points. So it looks like -1. 1's a nice point, and 3, 3. The slope is positive, and it's going up 2, so rise of 2 over 3. That's my slope there. And this other slope on the right graph is also positive. Pick 2 points that are nice here. Let's do this guy. Looks like we're going up 4, running over 2, and that simplifies to be 2. Now, one's a fraction, one is a whole number. If you have a hard time telling between the fractions, which one's bigger or not, take your calculator here and turn them into decimals. So 2/3 as a decimal equals 0.6, and 0.6 is definitely smaller than 2, which is why we were correct in saying that this guy has the steeper slope, because 2 is bigger than 2/3. Okay, 2 is greater than 2/3. Now, both of those had positive slopes, so it was pretty easy to compare the numbers 2/3 and 2. They were both positive. When I look at the second pair of graphs, the first graph has a negative slope. Now, let's look at the rise over run here. I'm going to find 2 points here and here. Looks like my rise is down 2 over 4, which, if you want, simplifies to -1/2. It's also hard to tell. I guess, sorry, I should go back. We could look at the pictures here. It's kind of hard to tell which one's steeper. I think maybe the guy on the right looks a little bit steeper, but but it's a little hard to tell because one's positive, one's negative. Now, let's find the slope with rise over run for the graph on the right. So I have a point here and a point here. My positive rise is up 4 over 3. All right, now, one's negative and one's positive. That has nothing to do with how steep the slope is, that is just the number of the slope. The steepness has to do with the absolute value. So if you think about the absolute value of negative 1/2, that's positive 1/2. And then 4/3 is already positive. So I'm really comparing 1/2 and 4/3. If you're not sure, again, use Desmos or your calculator to turn them into decimals. 1/2, you should know, hopefully, that 1/2 is 0.5. 4/3 is 1.3. Which number is bigger? Well, the 1.3 is bigger than 1/2, so that is the steeper slope. Right, so the two ways we found, we looked at the picture to see which graph was steeper. We also compared the absolute value of each slope. Okay, so that's what we had to do on the second one because one of our slopes was negative. All right, next part here. Now we're just given ordered pairs, and we need to use the slope formula. If you forget what the slope formula is, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So in order to use this formula, you need to first start by labeling your x and your y. Remember, you choose a point that you like better. So I'm going to say that I like this point better. So when I use that x and y, it's always going to go in the front for my slope formula, for the y's and x in the green box. So let's calculate here. M equals, I choose this y first because it's in my green circle and green box, so it's -2. Next in the formula is a minus sign, the y value of 4, the other one, right? So I've used both of those y values. Over. The x I start with is in the green box, so I go in the green circle. -4. Use that guy. Minus 0. Well, -2 minus 4 is -6 over -4. And you can simplify that. It's going to be negative over a negative, which is a positive. So positive 6 over 4. 6 over 4 can be rewritten if you want as 3 over 2. Or you can leave it as 6 over 4. That's okay. Let's find the slope for the second guy here. Label x and y. So my slope, I'm going to choose this point first on the right again. I'll do -1 minus 8 over 3 minus, now here's the tricky part, 6 is negative, so minus 6 again. When I simplify here, I get -9 over 3 minus -6 is positive 3. And -9 over 3 simplifies to be -3. So I have to decide which slope is steeper or greater, 3 over 2 or -3. Well, that can be a hard one to do because I have a fraction again. So let's take our calculator. Let's turn 3 over 2 into a decimal. 3 over 2 is 1.5. So let's see, 3 over 2, that's 1.5. And if I think about the absolute value of -3, that's equal to 3. And which number is bigger, 1.5 or 3? Well, that would be 3. So that's the slope of pair B is steeper. If I graphed a line with the slope of -3 from B, it would look steeper. All right, last little bit here, I believe. Yes. Given the following equations, we are going to graph the line and then decide which one is steeper. So line A is 3/4 x minus 2. That slope is 3 over 4. And leave the second part blank. We'll do that later. The y-intercept is -2. So when I start this guy, I start on the y-axis. I always plot this point on the up and down axis. I start at -2. And my rise is positive, so I go up 3, right 4. Take a minute here, if you need to, pause the video to be able to graph these lines on your own. Or this line, I'm sorry. So graph it there. If you need to pause the video to catch up, go ahead and do that. I'm going to do the same thing in graph B. All right, we'll compare the slopes in a minute once they're graphed. So the y-intercept here, the slope is -3/5, and the y-intercept is 1. So this time I start at 1, and I'm going to go down 3 for a negative slope, right 5. And this slope is negative, so I go down that way. Now when I look at those pictures, it is kind of hard to tell by looking at the graphs, okay? So you can determine the slope, which is greater, by looking at the graphs, but that's kind of hard to tell. They look pretty close. Or by the slope value. So I look at the slope values here. I have 3/4 and -3/5. All right, two fractions. Let's turn those into decimals to compare. 3/4 is 0.75. So this is equal to 0.75. And -3/5 is -0.6. Now, if I think about the absolute value of -0.6, that's just +0.6. Now, which is bigger, 0.75 or 0.6? 0.75 is bigger, so the greater slope is for line A. The graph on the left is just a little bit steeper than the graph on line B. And let me show you again. I'll show you on Desmos here. If I graph the line 3/4 x minus 2. So let's see, y equals 3/4 x minus 2. And then I have my original graph for number 2, -3/5 x plus 1. Now this is what we graphed, and it was hard to tell when I compared those which one was steeper. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this bottom slope positive so we can compare them in the same direction. If I look at those two lines, you can kind of see that the green line is going up just a little faster than the purple one, because you can see up here they eventually cross and the green one just keeps going up higher and higher than the blue. Okay, so that's why it's steeper. All right, let's see. Last little bit here, I think. Yes, and then we'll do the practice. So you're given 2 points in a graph, and a line in a table. So we have to compare a couple different things. If you need to, you can always pause the video and try this on your own and then come back and watch the explanation. First, we're given 2 points. So let's find the slope for that pair, and then we'll find the slope for the graph. Okay, so let's label our x and y. The point I like better is 2/4. So I'm going to start with 2/4 when I do my slope formula. I'm going to have 4 minus the other y value here of 1 over 2 minus this -2. I need 2 minus signs. 4 minus 1 is 3. 2 minus -2 is 4. So that's the slope for A, 3/4. The slope for B is negative. It's going down. We're going to pick 2 points on this graph. Pick these guys. Looks like I'm going down 4 over 2, which equals -2. And I have to decide which is bigger, 3/4 or -2. So if you need to, type 3/4 into your calculator. 3/4 is 0.75. Which is bigger, 0.75 or the absolute value of -2. Remember, you make it positive, which is 2. Well, the greater slope is for B. 2 is bigger than 0.75. All right, A, this should be easy. You don't have to do anything except look at the equation. The slope is that m, that -3. For B, I have a table of values, but I can find the slope if I pick two of these values here. I'm going to choose this guy. I'm going to turn it into an ordered pair. 0, 1. And why don't we do 2, 2? Then I do the same thing I did in the other example. I use the slope formula. So I'm going to choose my second point first. I'll do 2 minus 1 over 2 minus 0. That's 1 over 2. So that's my slope for B. So 1 over 2 is 0.5. The absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Which one's bigger? The slope for A. All right, there's going to be some practice. There's a couple things you can do. There's Canvas practice here, which you can go to right here. So you can click on the link for extra Canvas practice. Or there is a worksheet or a tic-tac-toe puzzle. Miss Aldrich or Mrs. Collini can help you decide or find what you want to do next.